10 years ago, a decade, which is a long time in technology years, I founded Potion. And we made work. I gathered together a great team, and this is my partner Jared. This was the studio at that time. Literally 2 guys in the back of a jewelry shop. And 7 years in, I woke up, and the studio looked a lot nicer. This is my daughter. And I didn't want to go to work. And I had fallen out of love with Potion. And I think what was really hard was that I had built this place. I had hired all of the people. And for some reason, it was not a good place for me. And I realized that I had built a place to do the work. But what did we need to do to make this a good place to work? So I looked and began to reflect on the culture. And I realized that when Jared and I started the company, we were so focused on the work. And I think if you're starting a company, if you're in a company, you can be so focused on the work that everything else you sacrifice for it. And that means you sacrifice family, you can sacrifice time for yourself, you sacrifice sometimes the relationships in the company because everyone's focused on the work. And you can create great work like this. And for 7 years we did this, but I asked myself, is this how we have to do it? So I actually gathered the entire company together, and I said, we have to change. And if in 18 months, this place is not different, I'm going to quit. And I was the founder of the company, which meant they were probably all going to quit too. So we had to figure it out, right? And this is not the first time we had tried this. 2007, I had written this manifesto, must change. 2010, we had a meeting where everyone aired their grievances. We had been trying to do this, but I realized that culture change is really hard. We're only a 20-person company. We heard from Phil earlier that that's IBM. That's 380,000 people. Even in a 20-person company, trying to change culture is hard. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the journey that we took and a few things that I learned. Good intentions can't change culture. Systems with intent change culture. And one small example of this is that, the performance review, I wrote this performance review. I downloaded it off the internet because I heard, it's a good thing to have performance reviews. For 7 years, we did this performance review. And you got answers like this. Skill and proficiency, I think I'm overall solid, right? And he was actually pretty solid. But this does not help us. The performance review that I do now, and this is her answer, and I'm gonna let you read it because I can't. But the biggest thing is I now ask, what is the biggest risk to Potion fulfilling its mission? And what can you do to mitigate that risk? I'm asking everyone to be part of the solution. I'm asking everyone to be aware of what's going on. And here Heather says overwork and lack of acknowledgement. And we actually have instituted systems that address those specific things. And this is what I do every 6 months with every single person in the company. The next thing is culture reflects behavior. And if you're in a secretive culture, then if leadership is secretive and closed, the culture will be secretive and closed. Behavior reflects culture. This happens from bottom to top. If it's acceptable for someone to be late, an intern, and then it's acceptable for the leadership to be late, then everyone is late. It just becomes part of the culture. And so one of the things that we realize is communication was so important. We're a design firm. And again, I think we just heard it earlier, over-communication is almost key. So one of the things that I heard, and I spoke to a friend, Peter Cho, and he said at his company they had these one-to-one meetings. And these one-to-one meetings were an hour long, where he met with someone to just talk. And I said, what would you do with that? That's a long time. And he said, it's important. And I said, okay, well, I'm just going to try it. So for 6 months, I scheduled 1-hour meetings with every single person in my studio, 5 hours a week, 5 hours a week for a month. So I would go through the entire studio 6 times. And in that time, I asked these 2 questions. How am I supporting you well? How am I, as principal, supporting you, intern, supporting you, design director? And the answers that I received were amazing. And then how could I support you better? Showing that I wanted critical feedback. I needed to know what I could do better for even the interns in the studio. And now, I just did a search on our calendar, and now, today, 3 years later, there are over 200 one-to-ones scheduled on our calendar, because it's now part of the culture, that communication. It's now part that everyone expects, not only for me to speak with them, but them to speak with each other. It's an understanding. It's a bar. And culture grows in people, not in handbooks, not in wikis, not in institutionalized documents. You cannot document your culture because it's growing or dying in people. And you also have to know, you have to value what not to change. Because when people are growing, just like my 3-year-olds and 4-year-old kids, they don't know what is good and what bad. And so we have to continually ask yourself, what value is so important to me that if that changed here at Potion, I would no longer want to work here. Because those core values are the things that tell you what not to change. So in the midst of growth, especially when you're in accelerated growth, you have to know those things to hold those dear. And so what I realized is that I built a place for me as a hybrid to work. And I got to do my work for 7 years. But when working with hybrid people, you need to be able to have open communication. You need to have a place where everyone can leverage their skills and talents. And that means you need to build a hybrid culture. And that was not the culture that I had really known to build when I started. When I started, we were just hiring people. We were hiring help, right? And that's very easy to do when you're in that startup phase. You're growing and growing and trying to get faster and faster. And there was a moment where we couldn't really grow anymore. And really what this ends up affecting is the work. If you have suddenly not a place where I work, but now where I lead people who want to create the work, I'm leading a team which is now leveraging all of the skills, all of the talents, where everyone is acting towards the same goal and creating the work together. And so now we've built a place where I hope everyone wants to work. And I realized that I have a new job now, and that for the last 3 years, I stopped being the person that was doing the work, and now I'm leading a place where now everyone does the work that needs to get done. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.